Hello again, and welcome to all those who just joined the webinar on what's new with the student loan forgiveness, our fall update. My name is Sanmati Naik. I'm from WorkWell NYC at the Office of Labor Relations, and I am very happy to announce the names of our webinar presenters. Katie Cabusoro, Director of Policy and Research from the Office of Financial Empowerment at the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. Amy Zualada, Outreach and Advocacy Manager from the Student Borrower Protection Center, and Katie Crumpter, Coordinating Senior Financial Counselor at the Financial Empowerment and Advocacy Unit, New York Legal and Assistance Group. So this webinar is brought to you by WorkWell NYC, your favorite WorkWell wellness provider. So for those who are new to WorkWell, our programming covers 5 areas to encourage staff to move more, eat well, be well, take preventive action, and address and raise awareness of the health equity issues. So just before we begin, a couple of quick notes. If you have any questions, please use our Q&A feature, and our experts and panelists would be answering as many questions as possible as the webinar is in progress. We also have some time at the end to answer questions as a live Q&A feature. However, depending upon the volume of questions, we may not be able to get through all. In that case, we will be sending a follow-up email with the recording and also helpful links. And in case there's any question which is still unanswered, you can reach out to the Financial Empowerment Center. So with that, I will hand it over to Katie. Please take over.
Thank you, Sanmati, Deborah, and OLR for being wonderful partner and hosts of these webinars. Certainly, as the student loan landscape continues to evolve and impact the lives of our fellow city employees and their families. So we're happy to do a refresher today and describe some new developments since our July webinar. By way of introduction, the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, formerly the Department of Consumer Affairs, protects and enhances the daily economic lives of New Yorkers to create thriving communities. We look to pioneer ways that city government can protect, enhance the lives of all players in the marketplace, including consumers, businesses, and workers, and how that work ultimately fosters stronger, more sustainable, and thriving communities. The Office of Financial Empowerment's mission is to educate, empower, and protect New Yorkers with low income so they can build assets and make the most of their financial resources. You may have seen ads for one OFE program, New York City Free Tax Prep, where you can have your taxes filed for free at IRS certified sites across the city. And we will talk later about our other leading program, the Financial Empowerment Centers, and our amazing partners like New York Legal Assistance Group. Next slide. Next slide. We have a very packed agenda today and recognize that for some listeners, this may be very stressful since this can be the first time you've thought about your loan since the pandemic. So we'll be covering a few topics: student loan cancellation, preparing for payments to resume, including a new income-driven repayment plan, public service loan forgiveness, the new IDR PSLF account adjustment that's in process right now, fresh start for loans in default, and student loan scams. Before I begin, this is not a training. We will help listeners understand these new programs from a very high level. And another note, as Sanmati said, we've done similar webinars in the past, and we encourage you to put questions in the Q&A. But to manage expectations, we usually have several hundred of them, and many are on a borrower's specific situation. Our awesome experts, Amy and Katie, will answer as many as possible, but broadly. So, spoiler alert, you are likely to have questions about your own circumstances and loans. and we're going to describe later how you can get those one-on-one supports to help you with your loans. And yes, to repeat, the PowerPoint will be sent to all attendees this week, so you'll have it for reference and to access the links within it. Great, next slide. Okay, let's get started on student loans' biggest development. They're back since the recent end of the forbearance under the COVID-19 pandemic. And we know that a significant portion of the 45 million federal student loan borrowers, and we estimate 1 million alone in New York City, are currently in the process of restarting their student loan payments. Next slide. As student loan payments once again become a monthly reality, we want to review the timeline. So the payment pause ended at the end of August. Student loan interest began in September. Student loan payments resumed this month, October. And services are expected to communicate with borrowers at least 3 weeks before payments are due. So you might have already received these notices. One new development is that the Department of Education, which we'll refer to as ED throughout this presentation, recently announced some helpful news for borrowers. There is a temporary on-ramp period through September 30 of 2024, so 11 months. Missed late or partial payments will not be reported to credit reporting bureaus as delinquent, which prevents the worst consequences to borrowers' credit profiles and scores. But keep in mind that payments are still due and interest will continue to accrue during this period. To help with this process, we can start with some small steps. First, understand what you owe and to who. This next one is really important. Update your contact information in your profile on your loan servicer's website and on studentaid.gov. Next, review your payment method, especially for student loans in which you might have chosen an auto-enrollment option. 4, use studentaid.gov's loan simulator to help pick a payment plan. We'll be referring to it a few times throughout this presentation. And 5th, consider enrolling in some good repayment options, such as the income-driven repayment plan and public service loan forgiveness program. And we'll be talking more on both in a minute. So I've already mentioned student loan servicers. If you owe the federal government, you have a federal student loan servicer. A federal student loan servicer is the middleman between you and the federal government, which lent you money for college or grad school. Student loan servicers collect your student loan bills. They keep track of whether you pay them on time. They help borrowers switch repayment plans, certify for forgiveness programs, and sign up to postpone loan payments. There have been a few changes in servicers in the last few years, so I'm just going to highlight a few. Fed Loan Servicing stopped servicing federal student loans in 2022. PSLF portfolios were transferred to Mohila, and all other accounts were transferred to federal servicers. Navient transferred all of their loans owned by the U.S. Department of Education to AidVantage, and Great Lakes was acquired by Nelnet in 2018, and they are in the process of transferring accounts to Nelnet, and that process began in March of 2022, and it's still unclear how long that's going to take to finish this transition. So with that, we come to our first poll. Do you know who your loan servicer is? Fantastic. So it looks like around almost 20% of people attending the webinar said no or unsure. So if we go to the next slide, we can help assist you in finding this out. So the first of the two methods is visit your studentaid.gov dashboard. It will say who your servicer is. And a second option is to call Federal Student Aid Information Center at the number listed 1-800-433-3243. And if you want to contact your servicer, there is a link here for a full list and contact information. We are hearing that the services are having a hard time keeping up with the volume of callers during this period. Remember the 44 million I mentioned at the top of the webinar? But please keep trying. Okay, next slide. Oh, yep, stay on this slide. Sorry. Thank you. One of the most important things that you and a loan servicer can do is to help you select a repayment plan. And we're including a link on this page to a loan simulator tool. There are many options for repayment plans, and among these options are the income-driven repayment ones, which can be very low or even $0 monthly repayments and forgiveness after 20 to 25 years. Next slide. Thank you. Good news in the world of income-driven repayment plans. The U.S. Department of Education recently announced the launch of the SAVE plan, a new income-driven repayment plan that calculates payments based on a borrower's income and family size, not their loan balance, and forgives remaining balances on the loan after a certain number of years. The plan will cut some borrowers' monthly payments to zero, potentially save other borrowers around $1,000 per year, will prevent balances from growing because of unpaid interest, and will get more borrowers closer to forgiveness faster. Next slide. The SAVE plan replaces the REPAY plan, REPAYE, with several key changes. As you can see from the chart, the SAVE plan calculates your monthly payment based on your income and family size. If you're making $32,800 per year or less, which is about $15 per hour, your monthly payment will in fact be zero. The repayment period can also be shorter. Borrowers with original principal balances less than $12,000 and close to 10 years of payments will receive automatic forgiveness. After that, you can get forgiveness in gradual increments. So for $13,000, it will be 11 years. For $14,000, it will be 12 years, and so on. The maximum repayment period is capped at 20 years for those with only undergraduate loans and 25 years for those with any graduate school loans. The SAVE plan also ensures that borrowers never see their balances grow due to unpaid interest, as long as they're keeping up with their payments. Next slide. So, which loans are eligible for SAVE? It's a big chart, but your takeaway here is people with federal loans made directly by the government for their own education are eligible for the plan, as well as those who consolidate their loans from the Federal Family Education Loan Program, FELP. However, people with Parent Plus loans are ineligible. Next slide. If you are already enrolled in a repay plan, you will automatically be enrolled in the SAVE plan. So you don't need to do any elections at this time. If you are not enrolled in the repay plan, you can apply for SAVE at the studentaid.gov/IDR. So we want to remind everyone of an important student loan forgiveness program. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness is a federal program designed to reward borrowers in public service. So basically, everyone who's currently listening. Next slide. PSLF forgives the remaining balance on your direct loan after you've made 120 qualifying monthly payments. Next slide. To qualify for PSLF, employees must, 1, be employed by a U.S., federal, state, local, or tribal government or not-for-profit organization, including U.S. military service. You have to work full-time for that agency or organization, starting at 30 hours, have direct loans or consolidate other federal student loans into a direct loan, repay their loans under an income-driven repayment plan, and make 120 qualifying payments. So again, if you're listening to this, you meet the eligible employer criteria. And don't forget to consider other past experiences in these areas, whether it's in government or nonprofits. So hot off the news from last week, borrowers can now quote unquote, buy back non-qualifying months in their payment history so that they can qualify for PSLF. This applies to months that don't qualify due to deferment or forbearance status. It's available to PSLF borrowers who already have 120 months of qualifying employment. And Ed encourages borrowers to wait until the PSLF account adjustments are applied before submitting a buyback request. We've included a link here for step-by-step instructions on buying back months. Next poll is, are you currently enrolled in PSLF? Great. So almost 40% are currently enrolled. For the remaining 63%, I really encourage you to think about it. It's a benefit for working for the government. The process is pretty straightforward. And we know that the median years of service in city government is about 11 years, which means many of you might have already finished the minimum repayment period. So moving on to the account adjustment, Ed announced that they are conducting a one-time adjustment of payment counts for eligible borrowers in IDR plans. If you're a student loan borrower on an income-driven repayment plan, this could be a big deal. All direct loan program borrowers, including graduate and Parent Plus loan holders, receive at least 3 years of credit towards forgiveness. So for millions of borrowers who've already begun repaying their student loans for more than 20 years, will receive student loan forgiveness automatically with this account adjustment. And you might have already read some headlines about it. The IDR account adjustment will allow more borrowers to get qualifying payment credit towards IDR plans and PSLF. They can get credit for the following scenarios: any months in a repayment status, time spent in forbearance if they had 12 consecutive or 36 cumulative months in forbearance, most deferments prior to 2013 and economic hardship deferments after 2013, and months prior to loan consolidation. Borrowers will not get credit for time spent in an in-school deferment, grace period, or default. And of course, for PSLF, you still have to meet your employment requirement and certify your employment. The good news is that for most of you, once you have direct loans, that credit will be automatically applied. But there is a big but. If you have commercially held FFEL, Perkins, or HEAL loans, you must consolidate by December 31 of this year. So that's about 10 weeks away. So please keep that deadline in mind. Another program that was recently announced is the Fresh Start, or was announced earlier this year. Fresh Start is a one-time temporary program from Ed that offers special benefits for borrowers with defaulted federal student loans. For those who have federal student loans in default, Fresh Start can bring their loans back into good standing and repair their credit, which is great, because by enrolling, benefits include restoring access to federal student aid, stopping collection, restoring eligibility for other government loans like housing, and more. It also allows borrowers to get out of long-term default without penalty. Fresh Start is a great option, but please remember that you need to affirmatively act to take advantage. We're including a few options, but want to highlight the online option as the easiest. Also, some other things to note: if loans are held by a guarantee agency, the borrower has to call that agency. And if the borrower doesn't know who owns the loans, they should call Ed's toll-free number listed here. So unfortunately, with the increase in attention to student loans, we have begun to hear some examples of student loan scams, and we want to highlight some consumer protections that we want to make available to borrowers. So while student loans aren't free, dealing with them always is. You might be contacted by a company saying that they'll help you get a loan discharge, forgiveness, cancellation, debt relief for a fee. You never have to pay for help with your federal student aid. Please only work with official organizations such as ED and its loan servicers. And be careful about the personal information or account passwords that you share with anyone. You can report fraud and scams to the Federal Trade Commission, included the link here. And there are, of course, free, quality, amazing city services that can help you. So we wanted to just also provide 2 other student loan news items. So as you can guess from all the news and programs, the new news and programs, the Biden administration is moving robustly forward with considering other options and programs. And we know that they are prioritizing borrowers who have struggled the most with the amount or maintaining monthly payments. So the bottom line that we hope attendees take away is that we expect there to be new, evolving, and expanded supports in the future. So please make sure that you're subscribed to Ed newsletters and news alerts in general. And then I'm going to highlight one. Last month, Ed announced the cancellation of $37 million in loan debt for students defrauded by the University of Phoenix. Eligible borrowers have to have been enrolled at the school between September 21, 2012 and December 31, 2014. And we've included the link. If you are one of those students or believe you were one of those students defrauded, you can apply for a loan discharge at the link included. And with that, I am going to turn it to Katie Crumter to talk about those one-on-one supports.
Hi, everybody. Let's do the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Financial Empowerment Center, which I've been linking to in the QA. If you've asked a lot of questions specific to your circumstance, your best bet is going to be to speak with a financial counselor at one of the Financial Empowerment Centers. There are links in the QA, and there's also this. You can just Google New York City free financial counseling. It'll eventually get to this page. Or you can call 311 and ask them to book an appointment with financial counseling. Next slide. So what are some of the things that financial counselors do? We can help you review any financial aid letters and create a budget to pay for the school. We can take a look at student loan options. I mean, we are not going to advise on private student loans, but we can talk about them. But we're not going to tell you which the best one is to take, but we'll tell you what to look for. We can help you enroll in an income-driven repayment plan if you have federal loans. You can deal with unpaid loans or defaulted loans. We can go over all of the different loan discharge options. There are many, and most of them work okay now. Historically, that was not the case. We can talk about loans in collections, and if your loan is in default currently, we can help you apply for a fresh start. Next slide. There's also, we can do stuff, obviously, anything related to your personal finances, a financial counselor can assist with. So we can help with other types of debt, managing your debt, paying down your debt, maybe getting you a lower interest rate debt. We can help you build and improve your credit. We can help you work on a budget, create a budget that is realistic, and help you find savings in your budget, where you can find savings in your budget. If you don't have a bank account, or if you have an expensive bank account, we can help you get a safe and cheaper bank account. And just making any type of savings plans. Again, all of this starts with the budget. Next slide. And this is a few tips about your budget to start with loan repayments. We have not paid loans in 3.5 years. And so that sort of is a permanent stop. And it's really hard to switch back, even though, we've known that loans have been coming back. None of us really thought that they were gone forever. But it's really hard to switch back into budgeting for something that you have not had to pay for 3.5 years, because it's as if you've never had to pay for it. So here's a couple of tips that you can, that should help you manage your budget when loan payments start up again. It's important that you actually create a budget, right? So look at everything you have coming in, look at everything you have coming out, see what those numbers actually look at. If those numbers reflect what you want them to reflect, great. You don't have to make any changes, but you do have to stick to whatever you've budgeted in those items. If those numbers don't reflect where you want to be, then you might need to make adjustments, and that you'd have to stick to those adjustments that you made. I think it's important that you revise your budget, not necessarily regularly, but take a look at it to make sure that it still reflects what your goals and objectives are. So maybe you're not making changes every quarter, but you are looking at the budget every quarter just to determine whether or not it's reflective of your current income and your current goals and objectives. It's really important that you prioritize or reprioritize your debt management plan, and you're going to have to take a real hard look at your needs versus your wants. Take a look where money leaks, keep track of where your money is going. I would say that the most popular leakage is actually food, and that's like eating out, or I would say that a lot of people underestimate by a factor how much they spend each month on food. And so if they're eating out a lot, they're probably spending a significant portion of their monthly income on food if they're mostly eating out. And then develop an action plan to manage your new student loan payments, including any repayment plan options. There are lots of different payment plans. Almost always your best payment plan is going to be an income-driven repayment plan. Save is probably going to be the best, but that's not always the case. It's not, sometimes if your income is high enough and your loan balances are low enough, the cheapest payment is going to be a standard payment plan. And depending on how long that standard payment plan is, that may or may not count towards forgiveness. If it's a 10-year standard, it will count towards forgiveness. If it's any longer than 10 years, then it will not. So that's all I have on this. I think those are my slides, right? Yes. And we're going to launch a poll. Is somebody else doing this for me, Katie? The poll question is, do you plan to use a financial empowerment center counseling?
Thanks for that handoff, and we'll wait for attendees to vote. And we asked the question a little bit because Katie is available. There are 30 sites across the city, again, to get the one-on-one individual supports that you need, whether it's student loans or other financial areas that you want to explore. Great. So we hope that you will continue to consider it as a resource. If not now, it is available 365 days of the year. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up on resources and summary. The next two slides are where you can get additional information on student loan in general, any of the topic areas that we discussed, including the new SAVE plan. And so it's going to be more relevant for you when you get the actual PowerPoint and access to the links themselves. But we wanted to make sure that everyone attending had this information at their fingertips. And on the second page are additional links for complaints or scams that have been happening. And so again, all in one PowerPoint, all the information. We know it can be very confusing. And then I'm going to wrap up because I know we covered a lot and you have a million questions. I can already see them in the Q&A. Before we jump to that, let me quickly recap some of the news. Student loan payments resumed earlier this month. The SAVE plan is the latest IDR plan and can reduce monthly payments for many borrowers. PSLF forgives the remaining balance on your direct loan, is especially relevant for city employees, and we really encourage anyone attending to consider applying and enrolling in it. The IDR account adjustment will allow more borrowers to get qualifying payment credit, so please do check your accounts to see whether or not that adjustment has been captured in your account. And with the Fresh Start program, borrowers with defaulted federal student loans can bring their loans back into good standing. Always be aware of student loan scams, and one of the best resources is our New York City Financial Empowerment Centers for helping with this transition. Okay, with that, let me send it back to Sanmati.
Thank you. So I believe that we'll be moving on to the Q&A portion. So Amy, Katie, do you want to take over?
Sure. Thanks for having us. Amazing.
I'm gonna take this first question because I was typing it up, and I figure I might as well answer it live. Somebody asked if former students of Berkeley College are eligible for loan forgiveness through borrower's defense, and the answer to that question is maybe. I mean, it depends on what the circumstances that you have are. So if you're not part of the class, if you're not part of the class action settlement, the suite settlement that was you would have had to apply for borrower's defense before July of last year, or there's also a weird period from July to November of last year that if you applied, that will have a quicker response time. You'd have to file a borrower's defense application and fill out all of the information as to why you believe that you were defrauded, or why you believe you deserve the borrower's defense. You would be eligible for a forbearance for the period, but I would say this, that generally speaking, until they make a decision, which could be several years away, generally speaking, borrower's defense is very hard to get that type of forgiveness. And if you're also eligible for PSLF, you may want to continue along that path until a decision is made. The thing about borrower's defense is that if you are eligible for it and you do get it, you will get every dollar that you ever paid towards the loan, as long as it was a direct loan the entire time. All right.
Thanks, Katie. I can address some questions that came through about public service loan forgiveness. Maybe we should spend a minute talking about that. There were a few questions, but just generally, there are a lot of benefits to looking into PSLF at this particular moment in time. And so if you're interested in PSLF and you haven't done something, taken any steps to kind of enroll in PSLF in the past, now's a great time to be doing it. The first step is really to check that you have a qualifying loan, and that is a direct loan. All you're looking for is the word direct. It doesn't matter if it's unsubsidized or subsidized. You just need to see that word direct next to your loan type. You can find this out at studentaid.gov by looking at your dashboard. You'll log in. You can reset your password if you didn't have, if you don't remember it. So that is the first step. If you don't have a direct loan, say you have a federal family education loan, or a FFEL loan is what they're abbreviated to, or a Perkins loan, you can consolidate to make your loan eligible for PSLF, for public service loan forgiveness. When you consolidate, if you consolidate before December 31st of this year, you're able to keep all of the credit that you've accrued on your loan. Normally, when you consolidate, you start back at zero. So you start back with zero qualifying payments. That's not true for this exact moment in time, which is why it's so important and so exciting that if you consolidate before December 31st, you're able to keep that credit on your loan and apply it to the loan moving forward, which could get you a lot, closer to cancellation under PSLF. So that loan type is the first step. And then the second step is going to studentaid.gov and using the PSLF help tool to certify your employment. This means that you'll need to get your employer, your current employer, and your former employers, if you have previous nonprofit work or previous government work that can be certified. You'll need to have, you'll need to submit your the dates of employment and your employer identification numbers to generate the form for you, and then your employers will need to sign those forms. And so you'll have as many forms as you've had employers since October 1st, 2007, if you have qualifying work that dates back to then when the program was enacted. And so those are kind of the steps to get on track for PSLF. You then submit your forms to MOHELA, which is the exclusive servicer for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, and then they will process your application. Though we know that there's a giant backlog right now. It's taking at least 6 to 8 months for folks to see their updated payment counts, maybe longer. And so it's good to remain vigilant, but know that there is a backlog right now. So yeah, Katie, please jump in with more thoughts on this.
I just want to mention one thing about that, because I had clients get very scared. They had received an updated payment count, Mohila, they were maybe, I don't know, 30 payments away. And then they consolidated their loans because they had two different timings of their loans. They had undergrad loans and grad loans. And everyone, it does make sense many times to consolidate, especially until December 31st of this year. So I would say that after December 31st, the question as to whether or not you consolidate gets a little more complicated. You want to really think that through. This year, before December 31st, consolidate away, nothing to worry about. You will eventually, but what will happen is if you have already applied for PSLF and you have, like, I don't know, 80 payments towards 120, when you consolidate, that will almost certainly go down to, like, I don't know how many ever payments since the consolidation, maybe one or something. It's possible it'll go down and it'll look like you've lost all of those payments. However, because of this one-time payment adjustment, this IDR account adjustment, you will get them all back, plus possibly more next year when they do this. We're not really sure when they're going to do it. Everything is behind as far as all of these programs are concerned. So I don't know when next year they'll do it, but you have the deadline to consolidate and not lose any of your months, although it may look like that temporarily, is December 31st.
And I see that we're getting some questions about how to consolidate. So you go to studentaid.gov. I think the top line is manage loans, and then there's a button to click, consolidate your loans. And that's the process that you take. It will take, maybe 30 minutes online, and then maybe about a month and a half for them to process it. As soon as you consolidate, as soon as you click the button that you've submitted your application for consolidation, you're able to certify your employment. So you don't have to wait until that application is processed. You just have to submit the application first, because they're going to look to see if you have a qualifying loan first, to see if you qualify for PSLF. So that's the first step that you need to take in consolidating.
I also want to mention there's some questions about how can I find out how many payments I have towards PSLF. And, if you applied for PSLF and your last application was at some point during the waiver period, as Amy said, and even after the waiver period, it's just taking 6 to 8 months to actually get the number. But if you've applied for PSLF in the past, your number as to how many months you have towards the 120 will be on your Mohila dashboard. If it doesn't look right and you think it's not counting all of your payments, again, it could just be a delay. It could be because maybe you didn't submit an application during the waiver period. All of that is fine, though, because everybody is getting the IDR adjustment. Every single loan will be looked at as far as the IDR adjustment is concerned. And so after that happens, you will have a much better idea as to how many payments you have. There is a way for you to calculate it, but it's a complicated thing. It's all in your student aid data. And, if you see a financial counselor at the Financial Empowerment Center, they can help you download that data and give you guidance as to how close you are to either IDR or PSLF forgiveness. Some of you may get IDR forgiveness before you would get PSLF forgiveness.
And a couple more on the theme of PSLF. So folks are wondering when they can apply or when they can submit paperwork for PSLF. You can submit, at any time in your career. And so if you're a year in, you can submit paperwork. We recommend that you submit it once a year and every time you switch public service jobs, so that you stay on top of it and catch any mistakes that are made in real time and deal with them as they come. And also, sorry, one more thing. Some folks are mentioning that their servicer switched from FedLoan to Mohila. So FedLoan used to be the servicer, the exclusive servicer for public service loan forgiveness, but they exited the market, and now Mohila is the exclusive servicer for public service loan forgiveness. So that might be why your servicer may have changed in the past year or so.
I'm going to address some questions that people, if you apply for a payment plan, an income-driven payment plan, they may give you an estimated payoff date that is well past 10 years. They have no idea where you are in the public service loan forgiveness landscape or the IDR forgiveness landscape when they give you those numbers. That is not, so the person who asked, my SAVE plan gave me a projected payoff date of 2048. that says to me that you have grad loans. And so that's the reason why it says 25 years. That doesn't mean, you know, if you have, that's like the longest date. That's assuming that you have no months towards IDR forgiveness and you have no months and you're not eligible for PSLF. So the short answer is yes, any SAVE payments, SAVE is an income driven repayment plan. It will count towards PSLF. You are not going to have to pay for another 25 years, even if that's what the estimated calculator thing or the payment calculations said.
I want to address Parent Plus loans. We're getting a couple questions about Parent Plus loans. So Parent Plus loans, by definition, are direct loans. So they qualify for public service loan forgiveness. That's that program where you can get your loans canceled after 10 years of repayment while working in the public service. So Parent Plus loans do qualify for PSLF. Folks often need to consolidate in order to get on an income-driven repayment plan. The only income-driven repayment plan that Parent Plus loans are eligible for is the ICR plan. It is the least generous of the income-driven repayment plans. It's the income contingent repayment plan, ICR. So Parent Plus loans are not eligible for the new SAVE plan that was announced earlier this year or last year. However, there is a process called double consolidation. It is an option for some folks. It can be quite complicated. It will be phased out in 2025. The Massachusetts Attorney General has a great resource on this, on how to do it. But you know, it can be a little bit convoluted, and so we can share that in the chat or in a follow-up email. But I just want to, so you know, this process, double consolidation, allows you essentially to get on the SAVE plan, but it definitely has its quirks and may not be the best option for everyone.
I'm just looking. There's some people that have received some level of forgiveness on some loans historically, and they want to know if they're still eligible. They are, absolutely. If you have, you know, you can just certify your employment, starting all of your employment going back to October of 2007. That's when public service loan forgiveness started. And so if you had those loans as of October 7th, and you were in any type of payment plan, or if you had loan forbearances during that period, you're probably eligible for forgiveness on those loans already. But again, you have to certify the employment. You have to submit it for those loans. I'm not really sure for this person that has had some of their loans forgiven. Maybe they weren't all consolidated, and that's why the other loans weren't forgiven. But you should be able to apply. You're allowed to have PSLF for more than one set of loans, basically. For as long as you work in public service, you're eligible for public service loan forgiveness.
We're getting, oh, go ahead. Okay, just a couple more on income-driven repayment. So income-driven repayment are, you know, it's kind of an umbrella group of repayment plans that are pegged to your income and not pegged to the entire balance of the loan. And so some folks might qualify for a $0 monthly payment because their income is low enough that, you know, that would yield that payment. And so you might, you know, still have a balance, but you only owe, you know, you owe $0 a month instead of, you know, an actual payment. This means that you're able to stay in repayment status, and all that time would count towards public service loan forgiveness, even though, you know, your payment is technically $0 a month. After being in income-driven repayment for 20 or 25 years, as a few folks have mentioned, you're able to get the remainder of your debt canceled. And then certainly, you know, if you're seeking PSLF, it'll be 10 years. But these things work together. And so you can be on an income-driven repayment plan and also be seeking PSLF. In fact, that's often the best, most affordable way to do that. You know, if you applied for SAVE, you might be put on an administrative forbearance until they decide what your calculation for your monthly payment will be. But if you were on the repay plan before the pandemic, you're automatically going to be put into the SAVE plan. For all others, if you're interested in the SAVE plan, you could go to studentaid.gov/IDR and apply there, or you could talk to your servicer to get on the SAVE plan and request that you be put on the SAVE plan. Those are the options for kind of getting on SAVE.
So there's So first, I think that Amy said this, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyone who has a direct loan and had that loan during COVID, they are all those months during COVID, March 16th to March 2020 through September 2023. Every single one of those months count towards PSLF and towards IDR forgiveness, just by the nature of the pause. That's just that they automatically count. So if you had loans and you weren't in school, on an in-school deferral and they weren't defaulted, then all those months will count towards public service loan forgiveness.
Just to reiterate kind of like this moment in time, there is an on-ramp period that is in effect until next September. And so if you don't make payments or you're unable to make payments until September 30th of 2024, you're not going to be sent to credit reporting agencies. You won't be considered delinquent or in default or sent to debt collection agencies. And this could work in conjunction with the new SAVE plan that's being outrolled. And so, in next July, part of the SAVE plan is that folks who took out those lower balances initially will be able to get some of their debt forgiven. And so essentially what it looks like is if you borrowed $12,000 or less initially, doesn't matter if interest accrued in the past, however long you've had that loan, if you borrowed less than $12,000 initially, and you've been in repayment for 10 years, you have a right to get your debt canceled in July of this upcoming year. And it goes up on a sliding scale. Essentially, if you borrow less than $13,000 and you've been in repayment for 11 years, so it goes up in that way. You're able to get your debt canceled this coming July when that feature of the SAVE plan is being rolled out. And so I mentioned this because it might work in conjunction. It might make sense for some folks, maybe not to pay on their student loans for, until July, if they know for sure that they're going to get their debt canceled under the new SAVE plan, if they, enroll in SAVE, of course. So I just wanted to mention that is how that functions. I also see a question about administrative forbearances and if that time counts for PSLF. Katie, feel free to weigh in here, but as far as I understand it, historically, there have been a lot of issues trying to get administrative forbearances to count towards PSLF. Under the new regulations that went into effect this past July, that time should count for PSLF. But as you can see, there's a lot of things moving here. There's been a lot of historical service or mismanagement. And so sometimes, things that are written into the statute maybe don't always come true. And so I just want to be cautious in saying that time will absolutely count.
I also want to mention, I think we're using some words similarly, and I just want to be clear. SAVE is an IDR. SAVE is an income-driven repayment plan. There are still a number of income-driven repayment plans. Most of them are actually being phased out, but SAVE is an income-driven repayment plan. So if you're applying for public service loan forgiveness, you have to be on either an income-driven repayment plan. So that means, and if you weren't on an IDR before, the only options right now are SAVE or the income contingent repayment plan. I don't think you can do a new certification to the other two plans. Plus, they wouldn't result in a lower payment, so it doesn't really matter. But the income-driven repayment plans are SAVE and ICR. The only income-driven repayment plan that Parent Plus loans are eligible for, unless you do this thing, the double consolidation, is the ICR, the income contingent repayment plan. And Parent Plus loans, by definition, are eligible for public service loan forgiveness. You need to consolidate for it to be eligible for the income contingent repayment plan. Oh, and a 10-year standard plan, which may make sense for some people, not if you have to go the whole 10 years, but if you have several years already in, if your loan balances are low enough, and your income is high enough, it's very possible the 10-year standard is going to have a lower payment than any income-driven repayment plan would. So that is also an eligible payment plan for public service loan forgiveness. And I just want to add one additional thing. Some people's SAVE payment plans are higher than their last monthly payment plan under an income-driven repayment plan. That says to me a couple of things. One, if it's significantly higher, maybe your family size changed, maybe your income went up dramatic, like family size changed as in it is smaller, maybe you got divorced, or maybe your income went up significantly. It's not the norm. And if people had repay before the thing and they didn't recertify, that payment is probably going to be lower. But, and again, it's not the norm for SAFE to be higher than whatever your payment was before COVID, but it is possible. People got big raises over the past several years. City people, especially because of the issue with your contract, right? You got people whose contract was settled this year, like in the past 6 months, you may have gotten like equivalent of 3 years worth of raises. So it is very possible, especially for a city employee in this particular situation, to have a payment greater than it was pre-COVID.
So someone is asking about ineligible payments counted for PSLF. So that's another nice thing about this moment in time and the IDR account adjustment that Haiti mentioned. Folks are able to get some periods of deferment, particularly if you had deferments prior to the year 2013 to count. Also forbearances, because they knew that servicers were steering a lot of people into forbearances and deferments instead of offering them income-driven repayment plans that would have had them making affordable payments and be in repayment status. So that's a way to get some ineligible time that was previously ineligible under PSLF to count at this moment in time. However, there is this other thing that went into effect this I think this past July, where you can get you can buy back time under PSLF. A few people asked questions about this, and I threw some links into the answered questions on how to buy back your time. So if you had periods of deferment or forbearance, you can buy back that time under what you would have paid in an income-driven repayment plan. And so there's a link to that in the answered questions.
So I just want to thank Amy and Katie. I think as all the attendees can hear, there's a lot of student loan news. They've answered many questions, but I'm sure you still have some. So as you receive the PowerPoint later, there's some information that's embedded there. And for one-on-one supports, there's the financial empowerment centers. So thank you, Amy and Katie. Katie wants to say one more thing before we send it back.
One final thing, because a lot of people ask this. They ask what they should bring to the empowerment center meeting. I would make sure that you have a login for studentaid.gov, and you've done that at least 3 days before the meeting, because it does take 3 days before you can actually do, at least around 3 days for you to be validated by Social Security. And be prepared to talk about your budget. So a lot of people may have to review their bank accounts or their credit cards in order to be prepared to do a detailed budget. So I would say those are the two major things. Make sure you have a student aid login and be prepared to talk about your monthly income and expenses.
And with that, thank you for that last tip. We'll send it back to San Mari.
Thank you so much, Katie and Amy. That was so informative. Thank you for answering all the questions. And thank you, Haiti, for presenting the webinar. So before we close quickly, upcoming events, we have our flu clinics. You can take an appointment at the nearest clinic. And we have a breast cancer prevention and treatment webinar. So if you do not get our monthly newsletters, definitely subscribe. We'll put a link in the chat and also send in our follow-up emails. WorkWell has so many wonderful wellness programming and events, so definitely check out, and also follow us on Instagram if you aren't already. And I'll launch a quick satisfaction poll. Please let us know how you found this webinar. And so while folks are submitting it, I would just like to thank everyone for joining. Look out for our email. It will have the recording of this presentation. It will have all the links which were mentioned by our panelists. And if you find that there is any question which is still unanswered after you go through all the links, or if you have any specific questions, please reach out to the financial counselor as was mentioned. So with that, we are ready to close. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you again, our panelists.